Hey everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things Florida real estate on how you can take your company to the next level. On my show today, I have Kari Lyke. She is the best with probate. She started her whole career on the probate real estate field, and she's been doing it for 9 years, about more than 9 years now. And now she has her own podcast show called The Investor Warrior. She's been just starting it up. It is a great show. She's bringing on investors and people that have been killing it in their deals. And she is a bright personality. She's always smiling. I was fortunate to meet her online on the Facebook pages, and now I get to connect with her. She is the best you have in Orlando, Florida, Central Florida. Kari Lyke, welcome to my show.
Thanks, Al. Thanks so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. I was really looking forward to this over the break, and I'm thinking the first person I have coming back is going to be Kari Lyke, and we're really kicking it off for the new year. So, for people that don't know you out there, Kari, let's have you tell your background, give them who you are, how you started, but what you were maybe doing before you found out real estate was the fruitful, prosperous land you are in now.
Yeah. When I first started in real estate, man, I didn't know anything. I didn't even know what a mortgage was. I was in the medical industry, and I was straight out of college, just a few years out, living the broke college, out of college dream, traveling, spending every dime I got from my career to put into traveling. Didn't have a lot left over at the end of the day, but that was okay during that phase of my life. And it wasn't until I met my husband and we started building a family, and I had to step into responsible adult role, had to get out of the broke college graduate role.
Right.
And I said, really, I want something different for my life, because I was really burnt out in the medical field. I was only in it for 3 years, but it was 9 to 5 with a commute on each end. And I was taking paperwork home with me. And they don't teach you this stuff in school. Like, you're not getting paid on the commute. You're bringing work home with you. There's salary caps. Like, I got out and I was kind of disillusioned. And if any of your listeners have worked in the medical industry or work in the medical industry, they'll know that it's gotten tough with insurance and patient care, and you can really get yourself burned out. So 3 years into it, I was burnt out. Picked up a book, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Listened to that, went through a series of trainings and events. And at that time, we didn't have a lot of money. We invested all of our money into education. So I had to figure out a way to invest in real estate without a lot of cash or credit. Didn't have great credit at the time. And I didn't own anything at the time. I didn't even own my own house when I first started. I remember sitting on the couch. I put out an ad for people who wanted to do rent to own, like, bad credit, no problem. We've got properties, rent to own. And all these people were calling me, and I'm like, maybe rent to own could work for me. Like, I'm literally trying to find these people houses, and I don't even have a house, and I can't even buy my own house. So, and I bring that up because you don't have to have it all or do it all to get started. I just started doing what they were teaching me to do. And eventually I stepped into this world of probate. I was like, what is probate? And I got, at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have a lot of time on my hands to go to the courthouse, to go chase down leads. But the county that I was living in at the time, I found out you didn't have to go to the courthouse to research probate leads. You could do it from the comfort of your own home in my nice fuzzy slippers with my newborn at my side. So I said, I'm going to start doing probate, because that just fits my lifestyle right now. Just the fact that I can build this probate list from my computer. So every day I would go into the courthouse records. I would find the personal representative of the probate case. I would get all their information. I would find out the deceased, where they were living when they passed away, made sure that they actually owned the property. And so there was a little bit of Sherlock Holmesing, detective work, which I really enjoyed. And then I would mail a letter to the personal representatives, asking them, if they'd be interested in selling the house. And I, over the years, I tweaked my probate letter. And what happened was my very first deal came from probate. And all of a sudden I was like hooked on probate. And
So
that just led me down this, and I don't just do probate, but for those first few years, that is all I concentrated on. That's all I focused on.
So we are going to get into all of that because you are a wealth of information when it comes to all this probate stuff. And just diving in, like talk about your first deals in probate is very different because we'll talk about how people have always heard, oh, it takes forever, it's
Mhm.
complicated, and there's phrases I have. But back up a second because you made a really good point about so many people that want to get into real estate, and you were in the medical field. I have friends that I told I was doing this podcast, and I was like, guys, you're gonna love this because you get to hear stories of people because Kari, you were something before even real estate. You were in the
Yes.
medical profession, and many people are always thinking about how do I first start in and dive in. And like you said, reading the Kawasaki book, and just starting, right? Because you could read and read and read, but if you don't start doing, you're not getting anywhere. So your best advice for those that are out there where they are just beginning or just thinking, right? So they're driving home and they're like, I'm tired, the insurance is getting high. I'm tired of going in the office meeting with like so many patients every day, every day, every day. What is that one thing that you would tell them? Do it. Like this is the first thing you do. Do this, or maybe it's the Kawasaki book. Read this, or is it just going to the investor meetings? What is that one piece of advice?
I think that my one piece of advice for someone who's not yet in real estate but wants to get into real estate, and it might be a totally different career change like it was for me, is to number one, just start taking action, whether that means to pick up a book and start reading it like I did, or to join your local RIA or join these free meetups. I mean, all you have to do is go on to meetup.com, type in real estate investing, and all kinds of meetups should pop up where you can go and start networking with other people. Because what you'll find out is that most people started with something before they started with real estate. And it's not that scary when you realize that you are not unique. If you think this is going to be a huge career change, it was a huge career change for me. I was only 3 years in. I went to school for 6.5 years when it came to undergrad and graduate. And only 3 years in, I hadn't even started climbing the corporate ladder yet. And I remember my dad, who was in the same job for 40 years, engineer, retired, very traditional, was like, "What are you doing? It's going to be really hard to get back into your career and climb this corporate ladder if you leave right now, just 3 years in." Because I was like, I'm done. As soon as I started learning about real estate, I'm like, I can do this. It can get me closer to faster to my goals, because my goals were over here and my salary cap was here. And there was a huge gap in between what I wanted to do and what I currently had the capacity to do in my medical career. And that gap was never going to get filled when I wanted it to get filled. And I saw real estate as the vehicle to filling that gap from where I was now to where I wanted to go. And so I just started educating myself and started networking with people. And that's when I found out there were attorneys, there were doctors, there were all kinds of people who started out with something totally different from real estate. And then they worked their way into real estate. And now all of a sudden it was like, oh, this isn't so scary. I'm not the only person doing this, taking this huge leap of faith and leaving my career.
It's funny because before, I don't think I thought about real estate at all in law school. I think maybe when I was studying for the bar, all of a sudden I was like, oh, real estate, the stuff was interesting. And then it wasn't until I was doing probate and then I was doing some of the foreclosures that kind of pushed me into the real estate world. And so I know what you're talking about, how when you first dive in, you had no experience with it. You gotta go to these meetings, go here, go there, read up on this, and it's a whole new world. But once you get in, it's fascinating what
Yeah.
you learn and the people you meet. Because I mean, if I wasn't doing the probate stuff or the real estate stuff, would I be on Zoom right now with you? I don't think so. I don't know what I'd be doing. Maybe I would be at some firm just being a mill or something. But people have to get outside their comfort zone, and you did, and you are a perfect case for what happened when you did. I mean, you're all over the place. And we'll dive in. I want to make sure everybody knows that you are the Investor Warrior podcast show, and they need to tune in to Kari. She's a wealth of information. But Now that you're in it, and we'll get to probate, but now that you're in it, what steps have you taken to build this real estate empire you are right now, Kari? Like, is it doing more leads? Is it doing finding different niches? Obviously, probate's one, but what are you doing to keep expanding and growing and connecting and networking that's making you even more successful doing what you are doing?
There's a lot of answers to that question. I would say that in order to continue growing, humans are either growing or dying, right? Everything in nature is either growing or dying. And I think that a lot of people will start out in any industry that they're in, whether it be the law industry, the medical industry, and they're all spit and vinegar when they first get started. They're eager to learn. They're ready to get out there and like conquer the world. And I used to see this a lot of times in physical therapy when I would do my internships with these older physical therapists who were doing, this for 30 years. They got super complacent. They got super comfortable. They weren't growing and expanding anymore because they felt like they knew it all and they had been in this industry now for 30 years. And honestly, they were not always the best physical therapists that I worked with because they were just doing the same thing over and over again. And so I loved when I would get with someone who was a little bit newer and a little bit more eager. And so for me, I've been doing this for 9 years, but I'm always learning. I'm always trying to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, because if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. I don't know who said that. It's not my quote, but it's someone else's quote.
Great quote.
And so I have always just wanted to surround myself with smarter people. I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly setting goals for myself. And when we talk about goals, like we talk about these bags, these big, audacious, hairy goals, but I also set so many small mini goals for myself. And I think that a lot of people, they stop growing because their goals either become too overwhelming or they don't stop to figure out how to make a plan and set little mini goals to get to that next goal. And I think it's Tony Robbins who says, well, I think it's actually a lot of successful people. He probably borrowed it from successful people that are smarter than him. He says that human beings, they overestimate what they can do in a year and they underestimate what they can do in a lifetime. And I think that's where people stop growing, is they overestimate what they can do. They get frustrated that they didn't hit their goals, and then they just stop. And then they go back to what's comfortable. And in the beginning, when I started getting into real estate investing, in the back of my head, I was always like, I have physical therapy to fall back on. I have my medical profession to fall back on. And I'm going to quote my husband now, and he's smarter than me in some ways, not always, but some ways. And he would say to me, Kari, I had a mentor who used to tell me, never look back in life, because if you look back in life and you go backwards, you're always going to wonder what could have been. And you're never going to live a life of happiness if you're always wondering what could have been and always looking back on what you can fall back on. And so it was finally like, I need to stop. I'm no longer a physical therapist. I'm a real estate investor. I'm not going to fall back on that because I left that for a reason. And I'm just going to continually, every single year, make goals for myself to push myself to become a better person, to inspire more people. And, when it comes to goals, it's great achieving a goal, but who you become in the process of achieving that goal is even more important and can be even more empowering. And so I just think you have to constantly keep pushing yourself to the limits, growing, because if you're not growing, you're doing the opposite. You're dying. That's what happens to most people during retirement. And that's kind of the warrior mentality, right? If you look at a warrior, they don't sit around for very long before they get the itch to go back into battle.
Right. No, that is true. And being uncomfortable helps you grow and learn. I thought about that this morning. If you're out of your comfort zone, that's when you are doing more things and expanding your mind. And I love what you were talking about. You're setting goals, but you're also setting like your mini goals. And if you can get to them because you can tackle them, they're going to happen. So you are making them, you are able to get to those points in what you are doing. And as you're talking, I'm thinking we are on the real estate show, but all of this is so inspiring. It's almost making me feel like I can do this. I can get there. So you are an inspiring speaker, Kari. Are you doing a lot more? I mean, you have the show, the Investor Warrior Show, but have you done even more speaking in your time, or are you starting to get more to that? Because you seem like the type, I feel like I can be that way, where people are just gravitating towards the message, and you seem to have a message with this stuff more than just investing. There's an inspiration in what you're saying. Have you been doing that?
Yeah, I actually I coached for a little while. What I did was I joined a local coaching program here in Central Florida, and that's how I really started learning how to invest in real estate. And you've got to be coachable if you want to learn anything new. And I was very coachable. And so anything my coach told me to do, I would go do it. I wouldn't even think about it. Like, just go do it. I don't even know if it's going to work, but I'm going to go do it. And so I think a few years in, he actually asked me to come on as one of his coaches. And so I started doing a lot of public speaking with him. Now, if you had known me 10 years ago when I was in my medical industry, I was terrified to talk to people, not even to talk in front of people, to talk to people where literally we would have these corporate meetings and I would sit around with like two corporate people plus the doctor plus me. There's four of us in a room and I'm sweating and my heart rate is racing because I know it's my turn next where I have to speak to these four people who I know, but to speak in front of people, I was just terrified of it. And my coach at the time said, I want you to get up there and speak at one of the next events. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. No way. That's like way out of my comfort zone. He's like, I believe in you. I feel like you have this hidden talent that you need to just get it up there and start doing it. And the first time I did it, I was terrible. I mean, I can't even watch the video right now. It's so embarrassing. I'm like cringing when I see myself. But after a while, I realized it's not about me. I was making it about me. Anytime you're nervous about something, it's because you're making it about yourself, whether you're getting on a Zoom call to do a podcast show, or you're getting up in front of people to speak, or you're speaking to a seller. I'm in real estate. We got to speak to sellers all the time, and that can be out of people's comfort zones. Anytime you feel nervous about something, it's because you're making it about yourself. And when you can take the spotlight off yourself and now put it onto the people who you're trying to help, then it's like the nerves start to go away. And what I realized with public speaking is it's not about me, it's about them. And can I inspire them? Can I get them to take the next action? Can I take a crowd of 100 people and have them come away with something new where they are inspired to grow a little bit more? And when I reverse the spotlight from me to the person I'm talking to, all of a sudden I was more clear-headed. I could answer questions better. I could get my message out better. I wasn't nervous anymore. And all of a sudden it was like fun. Like, this is so fun, just connecting and talking to people. And if I can just, one conversation could change someone's life forever. And you never know when that conversation is going to happen. And I've had so many conversations in my life now where it has literally changed the course of my life forever. And I hope that, just getting on these shows and speaking with people and inspiring, I'm able to change a few more lives.
Well, you are, because this is really inspiring. Like I said, I was expecting, well, we'll get there and talk about the real estate, but I was not expecting you to be so inspiring in the way you even convey and speak really well. I'm a speaker myself. So back in the day, I played violin. And I used to do a lot of performances and get up on stage. Sometimes the music was memorized in my head. I don't have a clue how I used to do it. But back then I wasn't, it's crazy. But back then I was I was playing in front of people, but I wasn't speaking. And as time went on and the violin kind of went I put it away, and then I was going into law. It's funny how that almost transitioned into my speaking role. And it's always interesting to hear how somebody first started getting into speaking like you, how it was not, you weren't even talking to anybody, and then you're now doing all this. So I don't know, all of that going through my head is really interesting. We're not even talking about land or a property. But it,
Well,
but
because successful businesses are 80% mentality, 20% strategy. And it's funny, I do always talk about like the mental side of business, but it's such a huge part of the business.
it is absolutely. You have to have that mentality of being out there and just doing it, not being afraid to just go take it. And I
Yeah.
love what you're saying and everything you're saying. So getting into a lot of the real estate world and what people are either tackling or interested in, talk to us about probate, because probate is something that you first started on when you began your real estate venture. I mean, you were going into the courthouse, or you were looking up the list or finding the list somehow, and you were contacting the personal representative authority. It's so different for me because I hear when people say that contact the personal representative, and you and I could talk about this sometime. There
Yeah.
doesn't always need to be a personal representative. So when I do these shows, I learn so much about the investor or who's on the show, because now I start seeing it from the other angle, and it helps me, right, educate, or it
Right.
helps me speak about this stuff. Um, Talk to us about that first steps of beginning in probate, and some of those stories that you have. I mean, everybody's going
Sure.
to benefit from the Kari Lyke probate stories.
No, and I'm super excited because I'm sure that you'll have some feedback for me on some of these. I'm always learning. I'm not a probate expert. I'm not a lawyer in probate. Um, but I will say that it helped me to solely focus on one thing in the beginning, which was probate, because you've got to become an expert in the person that you're talking with. We talk about real estate, and we talk about motivated sellers or off-market sellers, and there's all kinds of motivation. There's all kinds of off-market sellers who have all kinds of different situations. And anytime I put a deal under contract, I know going in that this is probably going to have some challenges as we go through title. That's just kind of the nature of the game, because we're dealing with off-market properties. Sometimes they're vacant, sometimes they're inherited, and they're not always straight cut and straightforward. So it was good for me to just focus in on probate because I got really comfortable with the probate process. I developed relationships with probate attorneys. I could kind of guide the seller when they called me and they were like, I inherited this house and I have no idea what to do with it. And I'm like, well, have you contacted a probate attorney? How much? How is it over 100,000? You think that's in the estate, or is it less? Because now I'm getting a feeling: is this going to be summary or is this going to be formal? Like, how can I help them through the process? And a lot of times, I was just kind of educating them on the next steps, telling them, I'm not the lawyer here. That's who you need to contact. But in my experience, this is the next step. Here's what you probably need to go and contact or someone or do. So when I started researching probate, another thing I love about probate is it's all public record. You can't go through probate without it being public record.
Right.
I'm sure. And so a lot of counties will make it easy for you to look through those probate records, and sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. In my case, I lived in a county where it was very easy to look through these probate records. And so what I would do is I would go back like 30 days previously, because I knew that probate would take anywhere from 6 weeks to, it could take years depending on if it was summary or formal, right? I don't know, you might have a differing opinion.
Definitely brought a different approach to this whole Northeast Florida market, but we'll get there.
So I would kind of go back in time and I would look at the probate records, and I would say, okay, well, I can contact the heirs and I can contact the personal representative. The personal representative is usually going to be the person that knows more about what's going on, because they're working with the probate attorney, they're getting all the paperwork filed through the county. A lot of times it was the most responsible person of all the heirs. A lot of times it was like the daughter.
Right.
Right. I have 3 brothers, so
Exactly.
I have 3 boys too. Like the women are sometimes more responsible when it comes to the financial planning of their parents. And so a lot of times it'd be like a daughter or a wife or a mother-in-law, something. And so I would contact the heirs, or I would contact the personal representative, and I would just have a letter that would say, I understand that, first of all, I would always give them my condolences in the letter. It was not a letter where you think of when we think of we buy houses cash, no commissions, sell me your house. This was a very personalized, very soft letter, because this is an emotional event that you're reaching out to people who are going through an emotional event. And so I'm not just going to send them my generic letter. So it would always be addressed to the person, giving them condolences on the passing of their loved one, and I would name the loved one in the letter. I don't know if the heirs are interested in selling the house at this time, because I know that this might not be the right time. But if and when the heirs decide to sell, please give me a call. I would love to make an offer on the home. And then I would always end it with I always end my letters with something personal. P.S. I'm a mom of 3. If you get my voicemail, please leave a message and I'll call you right back. And then, so I would have I have personal representatives call me, and they say that, first of all, I can't tell you how many compliments I've gotten on the letter. They say, that was a really beautiful letter. Thank you for sending it. I don't get a lot of angry sellers calling me. And I think this is a big question, is, well, you're reaching out to probate leads. This is a personal representative. You know that they know that you've done research and you've contacted them. Aren't you like an ambulance chaser? Like, I don't want to be that person. And it really comes down to your letter, because that's your first impression. And so I get people calling me sometimes that say, we're not interested in selling the house, but we just wanted to thank you for the letter.
Wow. That's impressive on its own.
You feel good. Yeah. And then I say, well, that's fine. If you don't mind, I would love to follow up with you just, in a month or 2.
So backing up a bit we'll get to like those next steps, because I really want to hear how you're breaking it down in the way the approach. What about probate before you got into, like, is it the margins? Is it the highly motivated heirs and the sellers? Like, what is the attractive nature of the probate real estate world in Florida? Because I don't know if you're tackling it in other states, but in Florida specifically, because many want to go after them or tackle them. Forget the timing. That's a whole other conversation. But what is attractive about it?
That's a great question. So what's attractive about probate is it's almost, I call it like a perfect storm of events that make it a great lead. Number one, you have people who are inheriting the property. So it is not their property. They are inheriting an asset. A lot of times that asset needs to be sold. They have to sell it because there are debts in the estate that need to be paid. The probate attorney a lot of times will be paid from the proceeds of the sale of the home. So it's not always a want to sell. A lot of times it's a need to sell. A lot of times these homes were their parents' home, where they lived in the house for 30 years. It's like blast from the past when you walk into some of these houses. Like, everything needs to be updated. Sometimes these houses have been vacant for a little while because, as you know, probate can take a little time. And so no one's living in the house. And in Florida, I mean, you have a vacant house. It's not, you don't have to wait for too much time to go by before you start having issues with the house. The heirs are paying, they're still paying taxes. They're still paying insurance. Sometimes they're still paying the mortgage. And a lot of times they don't want the liability of a vacant house. That's what they're dealing with, is this liability of a vacant house, and it needs work, and they need to cash out quickly to pay different things. And there's heirs involved that are going to get distributed. And so I should take this back. I've only done a few creative deals with probate. 95% of the time, probate sellers, in my experience, just want cash, because they want to move on with this period of their life. They don't want to do any kind of owner financing, creative financing. So it just makes for a perfect setup for fix and flip or wholesale, which is our short-term strategies. Anytime I buy a house with cash and I've got to fix up that house, my exit strategy is wholesale or fix and flip, unless it makes sense to refinance it and get all of that cash back out. And so it's just this kind of perfect storm of events that lends itself to a great lead and an excellent way to acquire properties and fix and flip them or wholesale them.
What are some of these creative probate deals that you've done? I love to hear this. Is it more of like the probate's done and then you're doing the restructuring after
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
Okay. So I was thinking like, I wonder what it is in the probate that's
No,
going on.
the
What
probate's
is
got to
Kari
get done.
doing?
No, it's really I mean, it's how we buy it. So we can buy with cash, we can buy with owner financing, we can do subject to, we can have a combination of everything. But with owner financing and subject to, usually we're getting into a long-term relationship with the seller. A lot of times with probate, the seller just wants to be done. They just want their cash and they want to move on. So, and that really fit. When I first started doing real estate investing, my goal was to replace my income as a physical therapist in 6 months or less. Well, that's going to take a lot of rentals, right? So I really got intentional with my marketing and I said, okay, what kind of properties would be good for fix and flip or wholesaling? Because if I can do that, then I can replace my income in the time period that I want to replace it in. And so that kind of led me down this path of probate. And I'm like, probate, these houses are going to need to be fixed up. They're probably going to want cash. All of this is public record. And even though it's public record, it's not always a list that you can just purchase. There are lists out there where you can purchase inherited lists, but they're not always going to be as accurate as you going to the courthouse. And anytime it's more difficult to get a list, you're going to have less competition and you're going to have better quality leads. So I was putting all this work into I was getting really good at researching probate. And then eventually we now have people who do it for us. But I just got really good at putting these lists together, and not everyone is going to do that. Not everyone's going to put that time and effort into it.
And it's a lot of time and effort. I mean, sifting it out, trying to find out which probates have properties in them, because not every probate has a property. It could be a bank account, an IRA, something, and you learn that by doing it.
And I've sent properties. I mean, I've sent letters to people where I'm like, if you're ever interested in selling 123 Main Street, and they'll call me back and they're like, well, if you're interested in buying the nursing home, then, and I'm like, ooh, that was a nursing home. They don't own that property. So you do have to get really good at researching, because then you feel kind of silly that I sent them this letter and they don't own that house. It was a nursing home that they were in.
Right. And I think even when I had started out, or hearing a lot of investors talk about like the different leads, and then you have inheritance leads, which are not actually dead leads in a way, or they may be competitive, but it's interesting knowing like the definitions of like what each one is, because the probate leads, it's in the courthouse, right? The inheritance leads, maybe the order's already there, so titles move to everybody. And it's like, now what? Have you found creative ways to deal with even like the post probate leads, like the ones where probate's done and now everybody's on title, or all the heirs are there? They think they own the house at that point. It's not even but they own it, and now they don't know what to do, and you're trying to come up with a creative solution for them. Have you run into those?
We have, yes. I would say more, but when we speak with most of our probate sellers, they are in the process of probate because we are marketing to them from the public records where I see they are going through probate. So we're intentionally marketing to them while they're going through the process. But I will say, now that we've expanded our marketing, we have more leads that come through our website. Like one of the flips we did this year, it came through our website. She had already done the probate. She was ready. She was on title. She was ready to sell the house. And now we went ahead and bought the house from her. But a lot of times I'm contacting these people during probate. Sometimes they can put it under contract, sometimes they can't. And at that point, it's following up, building rapport, making sure they're going through the process. And I'm educating them on, in my experience, here's what comes next. So a lot of times we're in the process and then they get the house and then they sell it to me.
After talking to you during this whole podcast, I'm not surprised why you haven't been successful. You're doing it, and like what you're doing, are you're talking about core values of follow up with people. Consistency is very important, and a follow through, and just being there for these people,
Yeah.
and trying to really explain how you can help them. So I'm not surprised you clearly have a system, a rhythm that you're using for all of these probate things. So in the world of Kari with marketing, because I've had investors on the show, Doran Nissim, he said marketing is everything. He said you can have the lead, but if you don't have the marketing, you're going to be well behind the pack. So where did you okay, so you had the probate stuff, but then you had to figure out the marketing. So how did you figure out the combination of what worked for you marketing wise when it came to probate deals? I get people asking me that, but I don't know the answer to it. Is it really the cold calling? Was it really the mailers, because mailers get expensive? Was it really the text stuff, even though I don't know if people are supposed to be doing that? But is it something that took time for you to mold, trial and error, or did you just nail it on the head at the get-go?
That is a good question. And again, I think it comes down to being intentional with your marketing. Because when you think about all of these marketing channels, you have cold calling, you have text message marketing, you have direct mail marketing. I can go on and on and on about how many ways we can contact a homeowner. And I get this question a lot too, is like, what do I focus on? Because I can't do it all. And the answer is, well, who is your audience? So for instance, if I'm going to pull a list of high equity properties that have owners who are 55 and older, well, do those people generally respond to text, a generic text, or a personalized letter? Well, these are older. They're in an older generation. They're going to respond to a personalized letter. They're not going to respond to a text. If they're older, if they're, in their 70s or 80s, they might not even text.
Right.
So for me, when I think about probate, number one, this is an emotional event that they're going through. And you probably, being in probate, there's so many crazy things that happen with family members unfortunately, during the probate process. It can be very stressful. It can be very emotional. And so I don't generally like to send them a generic text message saying, hey, we buy properties for cash if you're ever interested in selling this house. To me, that's like ambulance chasing, right? I just want to get the message out there and see if they'll respond back. So I don't generally text when it comes to probate. Cold calling, if you're comfortable with it, yes. But again, I want to send out a letter where they can choose to respond back. So with cold calling, again, I feel like they've already got so much stress going on. I don't necessarily cold call when it comes to probate. I send letters when it comes to probate because I feel that these are generally older people. A lot of times, and not always, but sometimes these are like 50s, 60s, where it was their parent who passed away. They appreciate the letter we send. We put a little Vistaprint. We went onto Vistaprint, and it's a business card. Only we turned it into like a quote, and it's a quote about when someone passes away, they become a memory, and it's got this beautiful picture of a tree. And so we put that in there with the letter. And it's just like this really beautiful quote that we can add into the letter. And it makes them feel like, okay, well, I might not want to sell this house, but this is a beautiful letter. And that's when I get the calls that are like, we're not interested in selling, but thank you for the letter. And so I just realized that with probate, who's my audience? Well, a lot of times they're older. Who's my avatar? A lot of times they're older. They're going through this emotional event. I don't know that they're going to respond to me all warm and cozy if I text them or call them. So what if I can give them a nice warm letter, and that's it? let them contact me if they're interested, and I can follow up with them via a couple more letters.
Amazing. Everybody's got a different strategy with this stuff.
I do. And
And
that's just
adding
fine.
adding those little elements into the letter, incorporating whether a card, a sticker, a magnet. I've heard it so many, and I mean, I've never seen some of these things like in person, but I've just heard about them. And I've heard some people say it works. A key,
Yes.
a token, or then I've heard people doing like the sticky note on the door, like, hey, call me,
There's
PS, all that.
so many ways, there's so many ways. I think you have to find out what works for you. And what works for me was doing a personalized letter. I would put something personal on there. Like I said, I say, PS, I'm a mom of 3 boys. If you get my voicemail, please call me back. And you know what's interesting is people will call and the first thing they say is, oh, you have boys? I have kids too. It was like already I'm building rapport with my letters by just adding that little touch. And then we get to the property. A lot of times it's like talking about their life and my life and how we're connected in some way.
Right. And that leads me into my next question, which is great. So you found the lead in the courthouse, you mailed the house, you got a hold of the personal representative or whoever it was, an heir. But now in the next step, they're interested in you because they said, we really like your letter. We're interested, Kari. We are in. How during that process are you really, because dealing with heirs is, I think, very different than dealing with a seller that has the house. I think
Mhm.
there's a different mentality when it comes to it. I don't know if it's more an entitlement. It's obviously it's more sentimental. That property could be their childhood house. It could be
Mhm.
just something their parents lived in a long time. I think there's a different mentality. So separating seller and then heir, how are you able to get that trust between you and the heir to get to those next levels, to get to, I feel more comfortable with Kari? And like you were just saying, being relatable with family, having 3 children of your own, they have 3 kids. A relatable factor is probably going to be one of them. But even as you get forward, because initial impressions are one thing, but continuing, you can build it, but then you got to continue it is another thing. So what are those steps you take?
That's a really good question because when it comes to probate, if you're not willing to hold hands and establish deep relationships and be in it for sometimes a long haul, then you should not be marketing to probate. I'll say that because it is hugely dependent on your ability to establish a trusting relationship with that personal representative or that heir. I almost feel like sometimes you're part psych, and you probably feel like this in your industry too. You're part psychologist, part lawyer sometimes.
Yes, I do.
I feel it that too sometimes with probate. I'm like, okay, I'm 50% psychologist, 50% or not even just psychologist, like a listening ear sometimes, maybe because they're dealing with so many issues sometimes, and sometimes family members fighting, sometimes it's just an emotional process. And you're not only there to purchase their home, but you're there to help them through the entire process from start to finish in the best capacity that you can. And so I, I would say that you've got to be honest. You have to be genuine. You have to, know, you have to be patient, and you have to know that you've got to go in at building rapport and trust. And I do that finding something to relate with them on. I mean, we've purchased probate properties before where we were not the highest offer, where the seller has told us, we went with you because we trusted you. We didn't go with you because you were the highest offer. And I truly believe that's because I was there to listen to them, to help them through the process. And I was only able to help them through the process through experience and my own research when it comes to probate. So you've got to get familiar with the process. You've got to know what you're talking about. You might not be the lawyer doing the work, but you're certainly one of their guiding forces if you're going to be the buyer.
Oh, certainly. I mean, there's a whole other element, outside of investor, buyer, somebody that's going to do whatever with that property, and
Yeah.
then the lawyer position. It's just, that's why I say I feel like dealing with an heir versus just a seller, like a husband and wife, is just so different because there's so many different added elements. Maybe brothers and sisters don't get along.
Yeah.
The parents are the ones inheriting it. There was no will. They're looking for the will. There's so many.
So many, I have so many crazy stories. I think my craziest stories probably come from probate.
I gotta hear this. Let's go. I love this.
And you guys, this is why you've got to have someone like Al on your team. I mean, there's no way I would have done all of these probate deals if I didn't have an attorney, a good title agent, people who are smarter than me, who have the license that I don't. I still don't know everything about probate. I'm still going to run into things that I've never experienced before. And totally fine with that. I'm comfortable with that because I've got people on my team who I can lean on. And anytime I've got a seller who asks me a question and I don't know that answer, I always let them know, that's a great question. I don't know that answer. Let me reach out to my lawyer, or let me reach out to the title company and get that answered for you. You don't feel like you have to know it all when it comes to probate. If you're going to go into probate, that's what your power team is for. But you have to get familiar with the process in order to establish that trust and that rapport with the heirs. They want to make sure that they are dealing with someone who is going to purchase that house, who knows what is going on with it. That's going to help you build that rapport.
And I know even after this podcast session, we're going to have a great time talking about it, because it's so funny. The things that you're saying are the things I started tweaking in some of the webinars and presentations that I do. Because when I first started, see, again, I don't do what you do. So I couldn't see your perspective. And once I started listening, the perspective changed. And so I tweaked it. And so when I do them now, I talk about how you don't have to know the words. You don't have to know the definitions. You don't have to know what summary and formal, and you don't even have to, I mean, you should know what a personal representative is and a petitioner is, but you don't have to know inventory. You don't have to know what an accounting is. Stop the timelines of like, so between this and this and this and this. I had somebody that wanted to get a take on, if we mail a timeline to somebody, what do you think? And I looked at it and I thought the only thing I would think if I got that kind of timeline is I would be completely turned off, and I'm, closed up. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to wait 12 months. Right. So
Yeah.
You're right, Kari. You don't have to know those crazy things. You just got to dive in. And the thing I tell people on the show, and now I start doing it in my seminars, webinars, my whole speaking thing, is real estate, probate real estate is just another real estate transaction with a puzzle.
Yeah.
That's it. There's really nothing. It's a real estate contract. There's a buyer. There's a seller. Yeah, the sellers are heirs, but there's just a different feeling to it, and it's just the same thing with a puzzle. And you just got to figure out the puzzle. It depends what it is. Let me ask you this though: do you feel so? Like, are you tackling Orange County? So which of the counties are you in? Because then it kind of goes to that next question: is it Seminole, Lake,
Central
Osceola?
Florida. Yeah, Central Florida. We're mostly Seminole, Orange, Volusia Lake.
Do you notice a difference when you go to a smaller county versus a metropolitan county like Orlando? Like, do you notice like a difference in either the person or the style of the people? Because if you go to something like, you have Jacksonville and it's just heavy metropolitan, lots of properties, and so high volume happens all the time in probate. But then you go to something like Columbia County or Suwannee County, super small population of like, I don't know,
I
20,000.
didn't even know we had a Columbia. Where's that?
That's what happens when you do a lot of probate. I've like,
I've never even heard of that one.
yeah. I mean, there's Okaloosa. I've learned a lot of different counties that there are. I mean, there was one story where there was a probate we had to do, and it was straightforward. Let's get it done. But they wanted everything by mail. But once we did it, we could send it in electronically. What it is. And we had it signed in 20 minutes. And I was like, I love that county. So the counties are different, but my question for you though is like, have you noticed a difference in I don't know, responses or just receptive nature, depending on what county it is, like the smaller markets versus a larger market difference?
That's a good question. And I don't know that I can accurately answer it because I think that most of the counties we're doing are more metropolitan. I don't generally go into the smaller counties like Columbia. And there's a reason behind that is because the larger the county, usually it makes it a little bit more easier for me to go to the courthouse
Sure.
and find the records. I mean, I've gone into courthouses before where they literally still had paper records. And I'm like, this still exists.
Yeah. You'd be so
And then generally
surprised.
that's going to be the smaller counties where they're just operating like back in the day, man.
Oh, and you know what? What was crazy was before the pandemic hit, a lot of those counties like Lee County and Fort Myers and Charlotte County, or Lee County was Naples, but Charlotte
Yeah,
County, some of the counties you wouldn't believe that weren't in the electronic era. We're still in the paper era. And then
right.
2020 hits, and sometime around June or July, everything was starting to be pushed
Right.
electronically, court system wise. So, I mean, for you to talk about how things are still paper and now we're kind of going into electronics, it maybe is going to be more accessible for people to
Yeah.
get these deals and leads. Um,
Yeah.
but in the world of probate, so now that you've built that trust, how are you like, what is that tip to those investors out there that get to that point that are right there for the picking to lock up that deal? Because it's one thing to be in rapport with somebody and you can keep talking, but it's one thing to get it down on paper, get it in writing, move to the next step. What is that one thing to get it locked in that you've done?
Um, so if I hear you correctly, you're asking, I've built the rapport with the seller. They've said yes to the offer. Now, how do we lock it up?
Yeah, locking up the deal, either whether it's just getting it down on paper
Okay.
or, because what tends to happen is it's all great in the beginning, it's all great as you go, but once you get to the nuts and bolts of a contract and
Yeah.
title and seeing
Okay.
what comes back on title,
Gotcha. Okay.
that's a sticking point, right? You hear
Yes.
cold feet, you hear
Yeah.
about, "Oh, is this going to happen? What about this? Is it assigned?" All of those crazy things. How are you really getting to that point? Like, what advice could you give to those investors to
Yeah.
lock it up, like that tip?
Advice number one is just lock it up with an inspection period. For sure, have an inspection period on there. No matter whether you're new or you're seasoned, I still do inspection periods on my contracts because a lot of times I don't know what's going on with this house. This house could have been vacant. I'll tell you something. We bought this house here in Seminole County, 4 heirs. Their mother lived in it. The daughter was the personal representative. So she was handling all of it. She was very emotionally attached to the house. She didn't want it to go to foreclosure because the first mortgage they had stopped paying the mortgage on. And we put it under contract with the inspection. And I was very upfront with them. I said, this house has been vacant for a long time. She had really let it go. I mean, there was holes on the inside, holes on the outside. I told them I do my own inspection and these are my numbers based on my own inspection, but I don't get up in attics. I don't get down in crawl spaces. That's not me.
Right, right.
Okay. I let the professionals do that. So if there is anything extreme that they find, I may have to come back to you. I may not. This is why we do our inspections. And she was like, I totally get it. I totally understand it. So the inspector came through, went up into the attic, found out that there was a family of rats living up there for God only knows how long. They had chewed up the wiring. They had ruined the insulation. They had chewed up the ductwork. It was like $20,000 worth of damage between the wiring and the ductwork and the insulation and the rodent removal. And I had to go back to her and renegotiate. And I sent her the inspection report. I said, this is what we're facing. I did not know this. You did not know it. I totally understand if you cannot move forward with this at this new price. These are the facts, and this is what I'm comfortable now with moving forward. And we can go past the inspection period and get this thing closed. And we did end up at I can't remember how much I negotiated at the time. But we negotiated it down and we moved past that inspection period. But don't be nervous to lock something up as long as you have that inspection period, because that is your time to do your due diligence. And I don't say that as like lock it up and then try to lower the price. That's not what I'm saying. Because a lot of times I lock it up and I never lower the price with my sellers. We move forward on it. But you never know what you're going to encounter. This is where your power team comes in to find the problems that you don't know that are there. And especially if you're a new investor, this is the time where you can really get good on your numbers. Bring your contractors in, bring your home inspector in, bring your buyers in if you're going to wholesale it, and make sure that you're in a good spot before you move on through the inspection period. And be honest with the seller. Always be honest with them. And this, again, sellers, homeowners, heirs, they know when you're being genuine and when you're not being genuine. If you're hiding something or you're not hiding something. If I can make sure that expectations are met from the very beginning, then I've built more rapport with them and I'm not running into problems later on. So when I lock it up, I let them know I'm bringing an inspector by. These are my numbers based on my own inspection. They may find something, they may not. Give me these 10 days and then we can end the inspection period earlier if I can get an inspector in there in 2 days. But I'm always very, very honest with them.
I'm expecting my team to have no less than 10 quote cards for you, Kari, because all of this stuff is super valuable in what you're saying. I mean, that right there, the inspection, right? That is, something you got to make sure you do, and you're upfront and creating great expectations with people. Being upfront, you've learned that, I've learned that dealing with the heirs and clients. Like, you want to make sure you have everything upfront. Everything's out there as much as possible. Sure, you get the nuances that nobody was expecting. People that have been doing it for 35 years, never seen it, kind of thing. But that's amazing advice from you on inspections and just doing it and locking it up. But now, I don't know if it's title, I don't know if it's appraisals, I don't know if it's whatever the other thing could be, but what is one of the biggest deal killers you have or come across in a probate situation? Is it the fighting? Is it the price? Is it title? All of a sudden you thought it was one probate, now it's 5. Hopefully not. Or is it something that you didn't see? Maybe I've seen before where they did a probate, but a probate wasn't done back in 1978. What is the biggest deal killer for you in probate?
That is a really good question. And to be honest with you, I can't think of one probate deal where we had to kill it. There were probate deals where we almost, like the seller and us almost said, we're done.
What were those?
Title issues. And a lot of times it has to do if there's a mortgage. I would say the biggest killer is when I know there's a mortgage in place or that there are multiple heirs. I know that there might be some challenges along the way. And I'll give you an example. There was a property that we did where the mortgage was in default. The title company had, oh my gosh, such a hard time getting the information from this lender. Months and months and months went on. The proceeds of the sale were getting slimmer and slimmer for the seller. So there goes the motivation to sell the property when there's no proceeds at the end of the day, and mortgage is not in their name, it's in their parents' name. Why sell it? Why spend all this time and energy? And this is, guys, this is why it's really important to have that relationship again with the seller. They knew we were going to stop at nothing to get the information that we needed from this lender to get this thing closed. We built that trust with them. So in the end, we ended up closing it, but man, it took way more months than I would have anticipated when we went into this. And another thing is title. When you put a property under contract with an heir, they did not own that house. They usually didn't even live in that house. We had a situation where there was 4 heirs. They wanted to sell it. They just didn't want it going to they didn't want it to go to the lender. It was in foreclosure. They were emotionally attached to the fact that they did not want their mother's house going to the bank. There was only a little bit of profit for them at the end when we paid off the first mortgage. Well, we put it under contract, and guess what? There was a second mortgage that no one knew about. No one knew that their mother had taken out the second mortgage. In fact, the title company didn't even know who had this note because it had been changed. And there was this, it took the title company a few weeks to do some research and make some phone calls. And we eventually found out who had this note. And it was a big note. It was like, it was not like a $10,000 lien. It was like 50, and it totally would have killed the deal. The house was underwater, and it ended up turning into a short sales situation. 5 months, 6 months under contract. We kept extending that contract with the seller. In the end, the sellers they didn't even receive any proceeds, but 2 of them cried at the closing table because they were just so grateful that their mother's house did not go to the bank, because it was literally, we were at like the very end of this not all working out. And I remember she gave me a testimonial video, and what she said was, the one thing I appreciated about Kari is that she was always there. She was always present. It wasn't anything but that. Right. I was the ear that she had, that I would listen to her, and we stopped at nothing to make sure that we short sailed this, and we worked with the title company. And in the end, their very small profit went away because we just couldn't make it happen. We were able to give them some money later on for some things that were in the house. And so we were able to structure it where they did get some money for it. But it was just such a rewarding process. But that title, I mean, 5, 6 months under contract, extension after extension after extension, sellers are not going to be willing to extend with you if you don't build that relationship with them.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's all about building the relationship with them. And then you were there for the long haul. You were there for the weird, the different, the thing that nobody expected, the phantom mortgage, which I'm a big proponent about, even before I do any probate whatsoever, pulling title, because you never know, right? You know, the property appraiser may say it's one person that needs the probate, and then you find out the deeds were all messed up and now it's 2 or 3, or you think that there was one judgment, and now this is what happens a lot too. I don't know if you've seen this, but we'll do the probate, and now that title moves into like 3 or 4 names, an IRS lien attaches to one, a judgment attaches to the other.
I think that happened to me, yes.
And it's like, where was that before? And you just you didn't expect it. Nobody knew. And you're just hoping and, praying that the IRS is going to reduce the lien or get the payoff. And it can be a drag.
Process, you guys. It is a process, and it can be really, really fun. And you learn a lot along the way. And like I said, I don't think I've ran into half the issues you probably have. I'm still learning. I still run into issues. And oh my gosh, I've never done a short sale before. I didn't know I was going to be doing a short sale before. Short sale is not my specialty. I made tons of mistakes with the short sale that it cost a little bit of time, but it was a learning curve. And it was just another experience that I can add to my journey. I learned a lot of things. And if I run into that situation again, I'll know better how to handle it. But I'm glad that you brought up the fact that you do your own preliminary title search, which is really easy to do. You can easily pull title. And I do the same thing now too. If I know that I have a situation where it's a probate or a vacant house or something weird going on with it, I always do also my own little title search before I go into it, just before I spend too much time on it. I want to set my own expectation. What am I going to expect going into this?
Right. Absolutely. And while I don't do it myself, I always make sure the people that are part of the deal go to your title company, go to your favorite title company. And if that's where you're closing it, pull it. Let's see what's happening. Is everything making sense? Is it going to kill it? Going to kill the equity? You have to know up front. Because if you don't, I am affected, you are affected, the seller's affected, and the thing that they wanted to sell and get rid of and get money for is now going to be a problem. So I'm glad you see eye to eye about that, getting upfront expectations, everything upfront and out of the way. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you talk about that in your coaching, your speaking, and making sure everybody understands the importance of due diligence. That
Yeah.
is a huge part of due diligence in what you're looking for. You're not just trying to make a contract, get under contract, and sell. There's a whole other process to it, and then we all know how long title can take. Um, yeah, it's a whole other process.
Probate's so fun.
It is a
It's
blast.
really fun. You learn a lot of cool things. You meet a lot of great people along the way. And I just really enjoy the process. I don't know what it is about probate, but I think that it's just the relationships that I've built along the years with some of these different homeowners. And I feel that and I'm sure you feel this way too, it's a very rewarding experience to go through helping people through situations that can be really stressful, can be really
Yes.
challenging.
Yeah, because you see the families and what they're going through, and
Yeah.
it is a challenge for all of them. I mean, I'd probably say all of them have some kind of issue, some kind of title issue, or some kind of emotional issue, and it's just helping them get through the process that's really important. So, and it's a great niche on its own in the real estate world. And if it weren't for
Yeah.
probate, again, I don't know if I'd be doing real estate. I don't know if I'd even be talking on the show. I don't know what I'd be doing. So it really segmented me into doing like what I'm good at doing, which is all this stuff. So, Kari, I couldn't get off the show without you talking to us about the Investor Warrior podcast. I really want you to talk about that. I would love for people to tune into your show and hear what you have to say, because there's one thing of me talking, and then there's another thing of hearing it from the investor that's done it and had those success stories, and bringing people on that had that crazy deal, that had the stuff, and that mental mentality that you have. That's a very different approach. It's not just doing, but
Right.
mindset is very important. Please tell everybody about the show, promote it, get it out there. What is it all about?
Well, so I'm a little bit obsessed with personal development, studying successful people, studying why people are successful. And so I came up with the Investor Warrior because I've coached people before in the past with real estate investing. I'm in real estate investing, so I see a lot of people, I get a lot of questions. And I see a lot of people who go to these seminars, go to the events, soak up all the information and don't take action on it, which is insanity to me that people would spend money, go to events and not take action on it. And it really all comes down to the mental side of a successful business. And like I said, I think that successful businesses, and this is not my quote, this is all successful business owners' quotes, 80% mentality, 20% strategy. Strategy is everywhere these days. Go onto social media, go onto YouTube, go onto, now we've got Clubhouse. You do not have to pay for the strategies. You can learn probate just by going on and researching on the internet. You can learn real estate investing by going to, all of these different social media sites, picking up a book and reading it. And so it's not the information that holds people back. It's the mentality that holds people back. And so I developed the Investor Warrior because strategy is important. If you think about a warrior going into battle. So what's really interesting is my husband read the whole series of the Genghis Khan. I forget the author that wrote it, but it's like a historical nonfiction. I love history, and
Okay.
I don't read a lot of nonfiction books. So it kind of gives like a story. And so I'm learning all about like 1200s, 1300s with the Mongols. Like these guys were warriors. Like if you want to learn what a warrior is, pick up these books because it talks about the whole journey with Genghis Khan, who basically united all of the Mongol tribes in the 1200s and the 1300s, and they have a lot of documentation about how he did that and what kind of man he was. And then you've got Kublai Kai, who was his grandson, I think, who carried on his journey. But it's so interesting, and I don't usually get into these kinds of books, but I'm like, the mentality that these Mongol warriors had was they never got lazy. They were always hunger for battle. They were always hungry to grow. They always wanted to expand to the point where at one point they had to basically starve people out of this city because the walls were so thick. They couldn't get through the walls. They couldn't get through the archers. And they knew that they were going to be in it for 2 years. They were going to camp out of this Chin city with these big walls, and they were going to starve the people out for 2 years. And about 6 months in, Genghis was like, my people can't wait around for 2 years. I don't know what I'm going to do here because they're literally thirsty for battle. My kind of people don't sit around for 2 years.
Right.
So he had to find a way to have them go out and explore and engage in battle while he sat there for however long it was going to take. And so they were thirsty to expand. They approached battle with this confidence that they were going to win, where literally they would have 40,000 warriors coming their way. They had 10 and they were like, we're going to do this. And they were excited about it. Like they actually got excited about the challenge of those 40 warriors approaching them. And this is life and death. I mean, we're talking about the life on the line here. And so I always kind of equate real estate. The sword of a warrior is just a vehicle, right? Their sword is the vehicle, but their mentality is going to win that battle, because you can go into a battle with a super sharp sword and know how to swing it. But if you go into that battle with doubt and fear and this lack of confidence, you're going to get slaughtered. If we're talking about a real battle. And it's the same thing with real estate. Real estate is just a vehicle to get you where you want to get to in your life. The information out there right now is free. You can learn how to do real estate, but if you're not mentally there to get through the challenges, to push yourself, to get outside of your comfort zone, to have those uncomfortable learning experiences, then you're never going to succeed. You might not even start. You might just be a walking encyclopedia of real estate information. And what a shame that is, right?
Right. Wow, that's amazing. So you bring on, who are the types of guests that you have on the show that you bring on that everybody can tune in, subscribe, go onto the YouTube channel, find her on Facebook? Like, who are these guests that you're bringing on?
I like to bring people from all different backgrounds, from all different industries, from all different parts of the country, who have their different journeys. So you'll hear some big name people like John Jackson and Zach Childress, and then you're going to hear people that you've never heard of before. And they all have their unique journeys, and they're all successful in their own worlds. And that's why I love just bringing different flavors of people on, because I think that some listeners are going to relate to me. Some are going to relate to you, Al, with your journey, right? Not every story I'm going to relate to. Not every, I don't do a lot of wholesaling. So I leave that up to other people to come on and talk about wholesaling. I don't do a lot of note buying. So I bring other people on to bring on note buying. And so we talk about all of these different strategies, but more importantly, we talk about where are you at right now? What strategy is going to get you to your goal the quickest? What kind of resources do you have? What kind of time do you have? And like, let's put a plan together. Because if you try to learn all of these strategies, you're never going to get started. But hearing them, putting them in your tool belts for another day and just taking action, like that's really what it's all about. So we talk a lot about that on the Investor Warrior too. It's just this mental mindset shift that needs to happen. I think that we talk a lot about things that get people inspired and motivated to just take that next step. So yeah, that's what the Investor Warrior is all about.
So many people could benefit from that kind of content, Kari. Just having that mentality is extremely important. So when people want to find you, people want to connect with you, and they want to subscribe to the show and listen in on the Investor Warrior, where can they find you? Your social handles, tell everybody, is it Facebook, YouTube, all of that good stuff? Where can you find Kari Lyke?
Yeah, so really easy. My Instagram handle, my Facebook, it's just Kari Lyke, Kari. There's a million ways to spell Kari, so I always spell it out, but it's also on the bottom of my screen here. It's Kari, Kari. Last name is Lyke, Lyke. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel called The Investor Warrior. And then we also have our podcast called The Investor Warrior, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere where you listen to your podcast, you'll find it. And I do encourage you to subscribe. So we run all kinds of fun contests during the week. If you subscribe or you share out the show to someone and you email me just a screenshot of that review that you left us or that share, then you can enter into some really cool contests where it could just be a phone call where we just sit down and talk real estate and see how I can help you. Free books from my guests, all kinds of cool stuff. So you can just email me too at Kari@theinvestorwarrior.com is my email.
And you need to reach out to Kari, everybody that's watching, because she is inspiring. She loves what she does. She's a great coach, and she knows all about that probate real estate world and has been doing it, now 9+ years. So she knows what she's doing. She's been in the game. Kari, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking your time out of your day. I know it's just the start of the year, so I'm sure everything's just as crazy for you as it has been for me. I'm really looking forward to sleeping in on Saturday morning and then working from Saturday and Sunday just to get ready for the next week. So again, I really appreciate it. I'm so glad I reached out to you and connected with you because I don't know what I'd be doing if I weren't for probate and connecting with people like you, warm, big personality, and you're just so bright. And I thank you again so much for being on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I just want to add to, I would not be doing what I was doing if it wasn't for people like you, who are so important on my team. So thank you for bringing me on and just sharing your knowledge with the world. And I hope this show inspired a couple of people out there.
Oh, it did. It will. And it'll be out there. It'll be on YouTube. So Kari Lyke, thank you again. Everybody, if you want more content like this, make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel. I've got content on probate, quiet titles, partitions, other little real estate things that are going on. And of course, I'm going to have the Kari Lyke podcast, the video podcast that is out there that you can watch, and it's going to be out there, the micro content, all the quote cards. So make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel. You can find me on Facebook at Al Nicoletti, where you will see Kari have all these topics, the micro content, it'll be out there. So I will see you next time on the Al Nicoletti Show. Take care.